Thank you for your patience. We will now begin the program for the green stage of the JICA Green City Initiative, International Seminar 2023. I will be serving as the MC today. My name is Iruho Roi from the Secretariat. I would appreciate your cooperation. We will now begin the morning session. The title of the first session is Overseas Cooperation of Japanese Science and Technology. Research and development of science and technology, its application and implementation in society are indispensable for resolving environmental issues. In order to resolve issues in developing countries, Japanese technology and innovation must be utilized. In the field of international cooperation, R&D of science technology is becoming increasingly important, not only as an input to the developing country side, but also as a means of enhancing Japan's R&D capabilities. The role of joint R&D between Japanese universities and universities in developing countries is increasing, and the number of foreign students is growing. In this session, we have invited experts who have long contributed to international cooperation and the research and the promotion of science and technology from the viewpoints of universities and education. And we would like to discuss how to promote science and technology and international cooperation in the field of environmental management in collaboration with universities. Let us discuss how to promote science and technology and international cooperation in the field of environmental management in collaboration with universities. First, Dr. Teraminami Tomohiro, Associate Research Supervisor, Department of International Affairs, Japan Science and Technology Agency, and Dr. Wakamatsu Shinji, President, Institute of Integrated Atmospheric Environment, and Professor Kitawaki Hidetoshi, Faculty of Global and Regional Studies, Toyo Universities, will be the speakers. Professor Kitawaki will speak on the pre-recorded video. After the presentation, there will be Q&A. If you are watching Zoom, please post your questions in the chat box. And if you are here in the venue, please give a piece of paper with the questions to the Secretariat by raising your hand, and then the Secretariat will come to you to pick it up. So we will start with Dr. Teraminami.
Good morning, everybody. I'm from JST. My name is Teraminami, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present. I have 20 minutes to talk about JST and its business, especially collaboration with JICA, the SATREPS projects. To start off, I'd like to talk about the JST as an organization. Do you know about this organization? Have you ever heard of this name? JST stands for Japan Science and Technology Agency, and it is one of the national research and development agencies. And it falls under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology. And its major objective is to promote science and technology. More specifically, what we do is we collaborate with universities, research institutes, and industries in Japan and overseas as well. And so we engage in a variety of projects to promote science and technology to solve social issues. So in this slide, I'm introducing some of the JST programs. When you say promoting science and technology, there are various phases in research. So, for example, you have the basic research, and you start from there. And then a seed from such research will start to develop. And then in the end, we would like to bring that into the enterprise development phase. And in the area of basic research, JST have supported CREST and institutions like that that support basic researchers. And CREST supports veteran researchers, mid-career researchers in Presto, and others. We will be supporting more younger researchers in Sakigake. Also, when the seeds are developed, and when we go into the enterprise development, areas downstream where it's more related to enterprise development, we have newly extended technology transfer program as well as COI next. And here what we do, this is not just for the researchers, we also collaborate with private sector. And further on the very bottom, we have this Mirai program. We also have Moonshot R&D program. This actually runs for quite a long time. So it covers basic research, seeds development to enterprise development. So it actually covers all of the phases, and JST will be there to support the program all along. So we are trying to support the various phases and needs of the research. And I believe that there are researchers present here today or participating. So if you are interested in such support, please look at our homepage. Next. So since this is a seminar hosted by JICA, I'd like to touch upon partnerships with overseas. And so we have international joint research and exchange of research. And this is a slide that talks that. Mainly in the Western countries, we have SciCorp. And we have an international researcher new mode mobility accelerator program. So this is like a bilateral research program with researchers from Japan and overseas. I mentioned this keyword about exchange and circulation of knowledge. So it's not like Japan researchers stay in Japan all the time. They would actually go overseas and gain new knowledge. So it's like an exchange of intellect. And so they would gain that and then come back to Japan. So this is something that we call like brain exchange or intellect exchange. And then also in the area of Asia and African countries, we have these programs, SATREPS, you may know that well. And then SciCorp, we call this E-Asia or Asia Core. This is for African countries. We also have what we call Sakura Science. And this is for students of foreign countries. We invite them to come to Japan for a few weeks, and they will be visiting research institutes as well. So that's kind of a little bit of training and tour of what's happening in Japan in the scientific area. So I'd like to focus on SATREPS since this is a JICA hosted seminar, and I belong to the SATREPS project area. I would like to focus on that today. And you may have heard about this name, SATREPS. And this program is jointly implemented by JST and JICA. The characteristics of the program, it refers back to the previous slide. So for these ones, it basically supports basic research. However, for the SATREPS, the objective is actually to use science and technology that Japan has as a diplomatic tool. And then it collaborates with the ODA development assistance coming from JICA. So this is a unique characteristic of SATREPS. So using science and technology as a diplomatic tool, I mentioned. So this was started in 2008 as a precedent for Japan's science and technology diplomacy. So let me be a bit more specific with regard to the research fields. So largely speaking, there are 4 areas. One is environment and energy. The other is biological resources. We also have disaster prevention. And the 4th one is infectious disease. But this is handled not just by JST, but it's for the AMED, Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development. So in these 4 research fields, the goal with which we pursue these programs is number 1, strengthening science and technology cooperation between Japan and developing countries. The second goal is capacity development or capacity sharing. Thirdly, we want to solve global issues. We would like to acquire new knowledge and technologies, also create innovation. So these are the 3 major pillars of the goals that we have. And by pursuing these 3 goals, what we are finally aiming for is to implement or apply socially the results coming out from these researches. Speaking about some of the criteria for each of the projects, one project could run from 3 to 5 years. This will be joint research, and target countries are developing countries subject to ODA technical cooperation. And the project size per project is approximately 100 million yen per year. And the breakdown of that, JST will fund 35 million yen per year. JICA will fund approximately 60 million yen per year. So this money is coming from both of these organizations, and it adds up to 100 million yen per year per project. In this slide, I talk about what benefits there could be when you apply for the SATREPS program. Major benefits are mentioned there. So we will utilize Japan's science and technology capabilities and apply it to the fields of the developing countries, so that we can conduct research that meet the needs of developing countries. A story that I heard from the researchers recently is that in Japan, there are researchers who are researching volcanoes. And of course, there are volcanoes in Japan, but there are larger volcanoes outside of Japan. So in order to further such research, this project would be beneficial. And also, if you are a researcher in energy and you want to research more the smart grid, in Japan, the transmission grid is actually quite organized. So there's not so much social need for this technology. However, if you go to an African country, transmission is not that streamlined yet. So it's an opportunity for smart grid researchers to be active. So that is what I mean by the field of developing countries. There are needs that only arise in developing countries, so you can actually perform these projects in such countries, and this is a major benefit participating in SATREPS. Specifically, how do we support the research? Number one, dispatching of Japanese researchers. So through SATREPS, they can be dispatched to partner countries. So, and it's not just the professors or associate professors. You can actually have graduate or undergraduate students participate as a researcher. And then secondly, the other way around, researchers from other countries can come to Japan to get training, or maybe get a bachelor's or a master's degree during the project phase. And thirdly, a provision of research equipment from Japan to the partner countries, especially for countries who have not been equipped with the infrastructure that they need to promote research compared to Japan. Japan is willing to provide for such equipment. And since this is a joint research project, it's not a one-way project from Japan. In other words, the partner countries are requested to cooperate in sharing a part of the cost. And in this slide, we are showing you the SATREPS project that started from 2008, and since then we have been able to work on 179 projects in 53 countries, and you can see that about 50% of the projects are in Asia and 45% in Africa. Excuse me, 25%. And then you can see the percentage on the table for Central South America and other countries.
So this slide shows the number of applications from researchers and the trend in the recent years. In the most recent period, in 2022, if you look at the number from researchers, we have received 62 applications in total. Out of that, 10 applications have been adopted. And if you look at the trend over the years, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of applications has been coming down year by year. Going forward, if there is a alleviation of the pandemic, and with the opening of the national borders and other restrictions, and then the number of applications may increase. So I would like to encourage you to recommend this to those who you know. Next. So this shows the adoption status by category. Due to the shortage of time, I would like to skip this slide. And lastly, I would like to show you JST's good practice as defined by JST. This is an example in Zambia. In Zambia, there are mines. And the local residents, there was a concern that the local residents may be suffering from lead pollution. And the World Bank has started to take initiative against this. And then Hokkaido University started to collaborate with Zambia University so that specifically for the residents, how they are ingesting the lead poisoning into their bodies. For example, underground water or from food or from air dust, they may be getting the lead pollution into their bodies. So closer look at this was necessary. But in conclusion, it seems that the inhalation of dust containing lead in the air is the main route of lead entry into the human body. That was a conclusion from this study. Such scientific evidence was made available through this joint study, and because of that, well, in the past, there was a suffering by the residents, but we can take measures such as prevention of lead poisoning and coming into the body. And that was something that we have clarified through this SATREPS project. And based on the evidence, scientific evidence, what the World Bank did was in order to prevent the inhalation of soil dust containing lead in the air, they have taken specific actions such as improving the soil, like plowing and burial. So such sophisticated measures were made available for the World Bank. So if you look at those examples, you can see that how science and technology is implemented, applied in society through the help of the World Bank. So that's why we are introducing this as a good practice. There are other examples, but in the Q&A, please ask me questions if you are interested in other aspects, such as a difference from other science aid, or how we can build up the relationship with the partner countries, or what are the things that you should pay attention to in making applications. And I would like to answer your questions as much as I can. And lastly, the programs with developing countries. If you are interested in these programs, JST is providing consulting services, and we are answering your questions by email as well. So that is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Dr. Teraminami, thank you very much. Next, we'd like to move on to Dr. Wakamatsu, please. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be here. Today, I'm going to talk about the experience of the International Joint Research on Atmospheric Environment between Japan and Mexico, SATREPS, and I'll introduce case studies of science and technology and international cooperation by Japan for the next 30 minutes or so. So I represented this SATREPS program, and in 2018 it was completed. And 7 years have passed since then, but due to the COVID pandemic, my interaction with Mexico had been interrupted. But for this JCCI presentation, I contacted the representative about the Mexican situation since the completion of the project. The then leader, Dr. Paramo, was so kind to give me a very detailed response. And so I want to share that response that he gave me on the 13th of January. And so I'd like to talk about the situation after project completion as well. And this project was conducted in Mexico City and Guadalajara and Monterrey, these three places. And 1 week after the first contact, he sent me the latest information about Guadalajara and Monterrey as well. So I will share that with you today. So let me explain the background to this project. Mexico, especially Mexico City, in the late 1980s, were experiencing severe air pollution. The main air pollutants were SO2 from point sources, from businesses. So sulfur was quite a high concentration and causing great pollution. So similarly to SO2, there was also this carbon monoxide. So when you burn things, this is generated. And if there is complete combustion, it turns to CO2. But with incomplete combustion, you had the high concentration of carbon monoxide. So the project that I'm explaining today, well, the background to that was the long years of accumulation of technological cooperation projects by JICA. So this summarizes that history. From in 1986, JICA went to Mexico and started cooperation for air pollution, and so in 1993 and other years, measures for CO2 prevention was conducted. So technological support was conducted over many years, and especially in the 1990s, late 1990s, SO2 and CO, and then also the ozone became a very serious issue, the photochemical ozone, and Mexico was considered to be the place with the biggest problem with the photochemical ozone. So JICA and Ministry of Environment worked together to start the Seneca project. So that was from 95. There was phase 1 and phase 2, and so over 7 years it continued. And within Mexico, there was the Center for Environmental Research and Training established, and various technological cooperation and human resource development was conducted. And this was the work I was directly involved in. So from 95, I've been involved in this. And Science and Technology Agency, they have this framework to support this for this project, and continue for 2 years. Using facilities at Seneca, a joint research was conducted. And so that was the precursor to the SATREPS. So over many years, with the support of JICA and JST, there was this collaboration, and based on that, the SATREPS was planned. From 2005 to 2008, this Seneca project, in order to continuously support this, the air pollution monitoring system technology cooperation was conducted, and we had great support from JICA people who are here today. So over many years, there was these activities, and between Mexico and Japan, research cooperation became possible because of this historical background. So this photochemical ozone in 1990s was the worst, and it has been improving, and it's leveled off now. And there are three areas of cities that we are addressing. The largest city of Mexico, the Mexico City, the capital. The second is Guadalajara, and the third is Monterrey. And they have different characteristics. The sources are different. The climate's different. And in Mexico City, the photochemical ozone concentration has come down, but the Guadalajara and the Monterrey, the concentration has actually increased between 2000 and 2010. So that was the situation at that time. And in Mexico City, so there was the increasing concentration around the Valley of Mexico, but outside of Mexico City, on the west and eastern side, Toluca and other such cities, the concentration became quite high. So at that time, the spread of pollution, air pollution to wider area was becoming a problem. So from 2011 to 2015, the SATREPS was conducted together with the researchers in Mexico. At that time, I was at the Ehime University, so we became the contact. I brought together Japanese researchers to start this program. So from 2010, well, it was signed in 2010, and in 2011, the president of Ehime University participated in the kickoff symposium at the Ehime University. And since then, over 6 years or five and a half years, various projects were undertaken. So this is the objective of the project, quite simply. The photochemical oxidant and the PM2.5, the fine particles. Well, Japan and Mexico were to work together to understand their characteristics and to understand common aspects and region-specific characteristics. That was the primary objective. And so based on this mechanism of production of ozone, VOCs, and PM2.5 in Mexico were to be clarified. And then based on scientific knowledge, we were to provide policy advice or recommendation. So in the SATREPS research, those were the major targets that were set. So the target areas are shown on the map, the three major cities in Mexico. So Mexico City, it's at the altitude of 2,240 meters, Guadalajara at 1,500, and Monterrey 500 meters, different altitude. And you see the wind situation. So the climate situation is, or weather situation is different. Industry is different. So very big differences amongst these cities. So objective was to look at the photochemical oxidant and the PM2.5 and take countermeasures against them. But in doing so, we need to look at the precursors, VOCs and NOx. We needed to understand the mechanism and also to understand PM2.5, the ozone and SO2 relationship also had to be elucidated. So in this big scheme, we need to take a comprehensive approach in the research. We thought that was important. So in this project, we established 6 working groups, and there would be young Mexican researchers in each of the working groups, and working together with Japanese researchers, joint research was conducted. So there were 6 working groups, and one looked at the ozone, the photochemical oxidant, to elucidate how it was generated. The second group looked at the VOCs that cause the photochemical oxidants. So they wanted to do accurate measurement and understand the dynamics of VOCs. And working group 3, they did a component analysis of PM2.5 to elucidate the relationship with the source. Working group 4 looked at personal exposure. So how individuals were absorbing the pollution, and especially on the roadside where it was the most severe, they tried to understand the level of air pollution. And then models were used to look at the source and the relationship with the concentration quantitatively to come up with the optimal scenario. That was the work of Working Group 5. And summarizing all the work from Working Groups 1 to 5, the co-benefit for the global environment was considered. So a scenario to benefit both the region and the world was considered with the participation of the the recommendation was made to the Mexican government or the city and regional governments. I don't have much time, so I will very briefly explain the outcome of the research of each of the working groups. So working group 1, they looked at the generation mechanism of ozone by field observation. So the method was to use ozone donde, and between Japan and Mexico, we did comparison research. So Mexico City in Guadalajara, several observations were made. And as you see on left and right, so in 3D, you see the distribution of photochemical oxidants, and that is closely related to the weather conditions. That was found. So the three-dimensional ozone dynamics was clarified for the first time in this research, and this was used to validate the simulation of the photochemical oxidants. And in Mexico City, we worked with the City Meteorological Agency, comparing the measurement methods with Japan and various observation systems. This is not ozone sondes, but it's equipment to measure the weather condition in the skies. And so working on those things was the outcome of this working group.
So this looks at the world, and these are areas where ozone zones are routinely observed. So in the Caribbean, this area that we have in the red box is a blank area in the world. So this was not good as a research. So we wanted to introduce this system into the Mexican Meteorological Agency so that they will be able to observe with the ozone zones there as well. So that's a major outcome from the working group 1. For working group 2, basically they looked at VOC component analysis. And CENAM is an agency in Mexico that looks at environment. And so we wanted to look at the generation of standard gas, and we provided know-how for that. And we got, we invited researchers to Japan as well, so that they will be trained on this generation of standard gas, so that they will be able to provide this type of standard gas in Mexico as well. So CENAM is now able to issue these certificates, and this was a great social implementation that can be highly evaluated. This is from working group 3. This is component analysis of PM 2.5. So PM 2.5, there is an environmental standard from the weight, and if we were to do composition analysis, we will be better able to cope. So that is what we did in this working group. And if you look at the bottom, so this is Osaka on the left-hand side, in the middle is Mexico City. On the right-hand side, this is Guadalajara. So these are the components. And so the sulfate in Japan, there are a lot of PM 2.5s coming from sulfate. For Mexico City, elemental carbon is large. in Guadalajara, organic carbon, that composition is high. So we see these characteristics. And so depending on where you are in the city, how we handle this issue is different. And this talks to the component analysis, one example of that. And in each of the cities, we were able to create this kind of a graph. So based on this, these insights, I think management by the government can be carried out. This is coming from the working group 4. In working group 4, we talked about individual exposure and atmospheric pollution. So for working group 4 from 2002, we had joint research. So we've compared 2002 and 2011 data as well, and we saw the trend in Mexico City. We were able to evaluate what the measures for air pollution prevention were in terms of their effect. And especially for Guadalajara, VOC concentration around the gas station was very high. And when it comes to VOC, when you inject the gasoline into the tank, there was a vapor release system or return system usually implemented, but not in Guadalajara yet. So this result actually promoted us to propose to Guadalajara a vapor return system, and they were able to implement that. So I think the outcome of this working group made the Guadalajara government to introduce the vapor return system. So that was one major outcome. And then we created this model user community with the universities and the municipal government and also the federal government. And this is like organizing the source and also including that in the chemical transport model. So we wanted to create a mechanism or organization. So that is one major outcome of group 5. Using such models, there were various calculations made. So 3-dimensional ozone trends. And is it more coming from advection or diffusion, which impacts this well more? Or is it because of the chemical reduction? So we looked at the source of the contribution of each of those mechanisms, and we were able to simulate through the model. And we compared that with the results coming from the ozone zone that working group 1 performed, and we were able to validate the models using those numbers. So for example, this compares Tokyo versus Mexico City. In Tokyo as well, and also in Mexico City, in order to reduce the amount of ozone, VOC reduction is very, very effective. It's more effective to limit the VOC. So this is a path forward in how to manage this. So, and this is one example from the left-hand side. So it's 12 o'clock, 13 hours, and then, you know, it transitions as time goes by, 14, 15 hours, so forth. And we are checking whether there was more than 80 ppb of ozone. On the lower part, this shows how much of ozone is generated in 1 hour. So that's the bottom column. So before in the Mexican basin, we can see this high concentration, and that was known in the past. But based on this analysis, we can see that on the western side, Toluca, and then the eastern side, Puebla, in these areas as well, we can see that this advection is happening from the Mexico City. So, and there's also ozone generated from each of those regions as well. So it's not just coming from the Mexico City. We need to look at a more broad-based measure, not just for Mexico City, but also including it. So this metropolitan area, greater Mexico area, Mexico City area is necessary. So that was derived from the results of this working group. So you have 12 o'clock, 13, and then 14, 15 hours, as you go, past the time, you can see that under these conditions, you can see that there is a vection from Mexico City to Toluca. So based on these insights, we have made several recommendations, starting from 1 to 4, and then number 11. So this is actual implementation learned from the scientific work that was done from this project. And then from 5 to 10, we were not able to obtain a scientific insight here, but there was a lot of consultation between the researchers of Japan and Mexico, and they had agreed to implement this. And for each of them, I don't have time to go into detail, but as I was saying earlier, Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, what the atmospheric environment is quite different from city to city or area to area, and that was found through these working groups. So using this kind of result, I think that we will be able to support to the environmental policy making in these areas. The other thing that I need to mention is that, well, we were able to make recommendations to the government in policy making through these scientific researchers. But the other good thing that came out was that we were able to train many young researchers. And some of them are now, getting the information from these researchers and bringing them into their doctorate research. And also in Japan, we already have this national exchange fund in SATREPS, and this person was granted that. So in 2011, she was able to join Ehime University with this grant, and she was able to get a doctorate. So now she is back in Mexico, and she's a professor of the Oaxaca University in the environmental area. And also, this there were people, students in Ehime University who use the data coming from these projects and utilize them in getting their doctorate as well. So from that sense, in terms of training people, educating people, I believe that these projects that we did really brought a lot of benefit. So from here on, so I'm going to be going to the last part of my presentation. So between Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, I'm going to be just showing you the recent pollution. And this was coming from the Palamo that I talked about in the beginning. So ozone, NO2, SO2, PM10, PM2.5. So you can see that just recently, all of these are coming down in terms of trend. But if you look at the Guadalajara metropolitan area, also looking at those components, ozone, NO2, SO2, PM10, PM2.5, unfortunately for ozone in the Guadalajara area, it is trending up. And also maybe a little bit in the NO2 concentration as well. So I think that we need to continue these efforts, and also we need to consider what more effective countermeasures we can implement. This is for Monterey. So in a similar manner, especially just recently, ozone is going up, NO2 as well. And the causes of these trends, I haven't been there for 7 years, so I really don't know what's happening. But I can just see that this is what the data is showing. So lastly, these are the lessons learned and some suggestions that I would like to make. So we used the same measurements, same analytical methods, and applied it in Japan and also in the 3 major cities of Mexico. And through this kind of research, we were able to get good comparative insight And based on these scientific findings, we were able to contribute to the policy making. And comparative studies have been made where, region to region differences were great. But I believe that we were able to suggest effective policy recommendations on these findings. And then also one more thing that I need to mention. This is joint research, and there were a lot of outcomes brought about by the joint research, and that brought a lot of benefit to Mexico. But also, in many of the countries in the Caribbean, they have utilized the results coming from these results. So, implementing, measurement equipment and applying analysis there, so that means that the benefit did not just end in Mexico, but it was applied to other countries as well. And after the project, I think that there should be some kind of a follow-up mechanism to check the outcome from the project. And then finally, I'd like to mention this. In JICA, there is a working paper, and this was published in 2017. And there's a very detailed, like 40 pages worth of what we did in our research. So if you would kindly access this link. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wakamatsu. The next speaker is Professor Kitawaki from Tokyo University. This is a pre-recorded presentation, so please enjoy the video.
Dear participants to JICA Clean City Initiative International Seminar 2023. My name is Hidetoshi Kitawaki. I'm a professor at Toyo University in the Faculty of Global and Regional Studies. And today's topic is university's role in international cooperation. And allow me to speak in on-demand content because exactly the same time of this presentation, I'm giving lecture in Cambodia for my ex-students. And my contact address is here and my URL is here. Today, I'm going to talk about these four things. The first one is university's mission. And I think many people think that the university's main mission is to teach. However, it's not the only mission. It has mission like education, research, and contribution to the society. And in addition, university have a lot of human resources, including alumni, and they can be working in cooperation with other entities in international cooperation. So I'm going to talk about these four issues today. The first topic is the university's mission and university's capacity. The first one is university mission. These are the definition by MEXT. MEXT is the education ministry in Japan, which is short for Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology. This is very long. And the first mission of university is, of course, education. We accept new students and working students to university undergraduate level and graduate level, and we do the human resources development. And of course, we do research, and we invent something, and we develop technology, and that technology can be transferred to other countries through international cooperation. This is the third mission, that is contribution to the society. Next, I want to talk about my personal opinion about university's capacity. I have many working students in graduate school. They are practitioners in many countries. They ask questions to me. What is the difference between practitioners' work and university's work? I answer. You practitioners how to make project successful. However, universities' work or research is to find the truth. If we find the truth, that truth can be used in the future project. Even if we find the reason why project fails, it will be beneficial for practitioners in the future. We have a lot of diversity in research topics and research period. For example, a short project lasts only 1 month and a long project lasts for 10 years. And geographical areas encompasses African countries, Pacific, Latin American, etc., etc. And students come from many countries. And they are with academic background or practical background. So there is a lot of diversity. And using such diversity, we can mix up everything and we can find out very unique invention, etc., etc. And intersectoral activities will be possible for university professors. In case of practitioners, they are engaged in some specific work in some kind of sector like solid waste management or water supply or sanitation. However, university professor, the same person, can do many things, and we can collaborate with various stakeholders like government organization, NGO, business partners, and with other universities, etc. Because there is no rotation of faculty members in the university, we have chance to accumulate knowledge. Then, university can be focal point of expertise and knowledge and human network utilizing alumni association, etc. The next topic is the educational function of a university. First, I have to talk about the types of education in relation to university. Well, there are formal education and informal education. In here, formal education means that the degree will be awarded and credit will be given when students listen to lectures. That is formal education. We have undergraduate level and of course graduate level, which is helpful for international cooperation. And we also have special educational programs. And as for informal education, in collaboration with other entities like JICA or other NGOs, etc., we have group training courses and workshops and symposia will be held. Let me talk about undergraduate education. There is the word discipline. When a student takes courses in the university, they think that their background or discipline is in that field. So undergraduate education level is very, very important for people because that becomes discipline for the student. And lectures related to international cooperations are offered in many universities. However, many of the courses are related to economical cooperation. However, in international cooperation, technical cooperation and economical, sociological, etc., etc., will be necessary to have successful international cooperation. We'll take a look at the case of Faculty of Global and Regional Development. That is my faculty. We are concentrating on both economical and technical and sociological, etc., so that international cooperation will be very successful. Or in my case, I'm offering these lectures like water supply and sanitation for health and appropriate technology for environment management and introduction to international environment planning. I'm going to briefly explain what I'm doing as a lecture. This is an example of lecture offered in undergraduate level. In undergraduate level, there are two tracks. One is English track, in which we are teaching in English. Another one is, of course, Japanese track, in which we teach in Japanese. And the title of this lecture is Water Supply and Sanitation for Health, and the subtitle is Adapting Japanese Environment Experiences to Developing Countries. I think this way of thinking is very important because a lot of students are coming from various parts of the world. Therefore, Japanese experiences on environment management is very helpful for the future in which they begin to work in the field of environment management. In the course, there are so many students from developing countries, so the introduction of Japanese technology and history will be very important. I'm teaching water supply, sanitation, and solid waste management. Of course, today I cannot cover everything, but let me give some of the examples. And this is the introduction history of intermediate treatment like incinerators. And in many Asian countries, they are going to introduce waste incineration plants, so that will be very helpful to introduce Japanese technology and how to adapt it to their countries. And the stage of final disposal of solid waste management, Osaka Bay Phoenix Center will be one example of coordination among a lot of municipalities and a lot of sectors, etc. This kind of planning methodology or planning idea will be helpful for developing countries. I have long been involved in technology transfer of on-site sanitation system called JOCASO. It was successful in Japan, however, it's very difficult to transfer to other countries because of the difference in culture and economic and technological level. In the lectures, I'm always teaching what the difference between Japan and other countries and why it was successful here and why it's not successful in other countries. Such kind of comparison is very important and it can be discipline in undergraduate student that technology transfer is not simple. Next is education in graduate level. This is more important in international cooperation because this is the capacity development for experts. In graduate school, we have, of course, Japanese students and foreign students. Let me begin with the Japanese students. Most of them are experts working in international cooperation, and the students are coming from JICA and consulting firm and Japan Overseas Cooperation volunteers dispatched to many developing countries and government employees in Japan, etc., etc. They have their own work experiences in their field. However, it's better to get technology transfer theories and think about how to make technology transfer successful. So in graduate school, they obtain a master degree and doctoral degree, and they come back to their field so that international cooperation becomes better. In addition, we have special education program for the invention of new technologies. For example, SPRING. Well, this is under JST, and this is short for Support Program for Pioneering Research Institute by the next generation researchers. We are supporting students to make a new invention, then it can be transferred to many developing countries. In my university, I'm leading a spring project under the name of Capacity Development Project towards social implementation of academic knowledge on human security. And we are going to contribute to SDG number 3, health and welfare. We are accepting a lot of foreign students in graduate school. There are private students, of course, and there are scholarship students funded by governments or JICA, etc. They are from recipient countries. They were counterparts of JICA project, etc. And they used to be working in the ministry and the municipalities in their own countries. And it is very important to teach transfer of Japanese technologies and how Japan made progress, etc., etc. Therefore, we are teaching Japanese experiences in the improvement process of water supply or solid waste management or sanitation. Well, JICA is preparing textbook and we are helping it. And let me show some examples of courses of foreign scholarship students. The first one is JDS. Formerly, it was called JDS, but now it's a project of Human Resources Development Scholarship, and acronym remains the same like JDS. And now we are accepting students from Cambodia in the scheme of JDS, and from African countries, ABE initiative is there. And SDG global leaders, we are accepting students from Pacific Island, etc. And there is to be a Pacific Leads program, etc. So, utilizing or in combination with this scholarship program, the university is teaching them how to carry out technology transfer successfully. This map shows the history of acceptance of JICA-sponsored students to our graduate school. And well, these colors shows the schemes of the scholarship. And recently, we are accepting so many students from African countries, but the area covers all over the world. These are snapshots taken in their field visit in their course. On the left side, this was a visit to Iwate Prefecture in 2018. Right side, this is a visit to Yamanashi Prefecture 2021. If foreign participants are interested in participating in these courses, please contact the JICA office, etc. Next topic is research function of a university. There are two important keywords like invention and innovation. When something is invented, it doesn't become innovation before it expands. In this process, university and aid agencies play an important role. The first basic research will be done by university and some research institutes, and they make invention. And research and development in Japan will be done by university, maybe in combination with business, and it will be transferred to other countries with technical cooperation. In this case, aid agencies will play an important role. However, aid project or technical cooperation project will be in a spot, not countrywide. To make expansion, business entity will be important stakeholder. And in the expansion stage, of course, business will be helpful. So, university, aid agencies, and business entities, they should be hand in hands, and they should cooperate to make innovation in developing countries. For a successful technology transfer, it is absolutely important to do research on appropriate technology. There are so many definitions on appropriate technology. However, one of them is this: technically viable, economically feasible, culturally accepted, and environmentally sound. It is rather difficult to achieve all of them. However, we should not abandon. Well, another important word is not adopt, but adapt. Well, Japanese technology is not always appropriate in developing countries if the conditions are different. If there are some constraints in developing countries, maybe reverse innovation or the introduction of idea of leapfrog will be necessary. And intersectoral research entities will be required because the definition of appropriate technology covers technical issue, economical issue, cultural issue, etc. So, research institute should have a lot of people, researchers from various backgrounds. One example in Toyo University is Center for Sustainable Development Studies, and one NGO is Appropriate Technology Forum Japan, in which I'm involved. The fourth topic is university's contribution to the society. In this case, it's international cooperation. As for the support to international cooperation, we can be proponent of international cooperation schemes. I think SATREPS is one, and other development studies and grant aid project. To these projects, we can dispatch faculty members as experts. And in group training courses, of course, resource persons come from university to give lectures. And the example we are doing is ADBI Toy University course on sea-wise. I think in blue stage today now, Dr. Sitaram from ADBI and Dr. Roshan from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are participating. So we are working with them to have the course into university. We have the education system inviting foreign experts and scholarship students in our university. Another important thing to make technical cooperation successful is the partnership with universities, private sector, and ODAs. University resource persons can be involved in many projects like project finding, project formation, or supervision and advising many projects, etc., etc. And university resource persons can also give advice to feasibility studies funded by Japanese government. And in the implementation of this project, there are so many stakeholders. Then there are donors, recipient, business, and university. And if they make winning combination in the project, technology transfer will be successful, and afterwards we can have innovation utilizing invention made in the universities. The last but not least important point is that university have alumni. And in the alumni, we can find all types of stakeholders who can be counterpartners in the projects. One of the Japanese phrase, it says, friends who ate from the same pot. In English, lived under the same roof. Okay, they can make collaboration for a long time. And actually, today I'm in Cambodia to make alumni association in Phnom Penh and other cities. Well, in this way, we can make collaboration among the participants who are gathering today, and let's make technology transfer successful. They are my ex-students who graduated in these years. Some of them are experts in international cooperation, and some of them are from foreign countries, and some of them were working as Japan Overseas Corporations. Perhaps they will meet you in the future. Thank you very much for today.
Excuse us for that. So first, the question for Teraminami-san. So I was able to deepen my understanding through the case studies. What are some expectations you have for the future of SATREPS? If Teraminami-san, can you come to the podium and answer the question? Dr. Tomohiro Teraminami. Okay, thank you very much for your question. I think the question is what other projects we have in mind. Well, this is actually a quite difficult question, but as we mentioned in the SATREPS, we have 4 areas: environmental, energy, and biological resources, and infectious disease, and so forth. So I think that it's important to actually present or propose projects that are in line with the nature of the other party, the other country. Thank you very much, Teraminami-san. Next is a question to Wakamatsu-san.
I have 2 questions for Wakamatsu-san. The first question is in promoting SATREPS projects, what are key points and important points? That's the first question. The second question is, for many years, you were involved in international cooperation, but in advising international technical transfer, what are the things that you are paying attention to? Thank you very much. There are representatives from JST, so I would like to ask them to maybe make comments. But the keywords, there are several: social implementation and human resources training. Basically, in SATREPS, I worked there for 5 years. In total of 5 years, it is difficult to achieve both of them. Basically, this is a joint study or research. Therefore, in order to get the productive outcome for academic paper, that is the primary purpose. And based on that outcome, social implementation is to be performed. Within 5 years, doing all of this is difficult. Therefore, if possible, when it comes to social implementation and the use of the outcome of human resources development, there should be a follow-up. How can I say mechanism? It's not a new proposal for SATREPS, but as a follow-up, probably a mechanism can be conceived. There are changes of generations, and in SATREPS, some young scholars, they took the degrees. How can we take advantage of these talents is a major issue. So in the 4 years of SATREPS, the outcome from them, how can we utilize those outcomes in each respective country? We should be able to follow up on these activities. Well, they are young researchers, therefore, for them to make such a proposal to SATREPS is difficult because the people who make the proposals are more mature researchers. Therefore, we should have a mechanism so that we can continue to develop next generation researchers. Basically, in SATREPS, for the same theme, no one can apply for the second time project. So that was the case when I was there, at least. In the project that we have conducted this time, in order to conduct the social implementation, we cannot apply for another SATREPS project. That was something I was told. So this project is over 7 years ago, and up to date, we haven't had any contact, and it was very unfortunate. Especially recently, on a remote basis, people can exchange opinions, but only on a remote basis, there are things we can't do. For example, how to use the equipment, and for the modeling, the trial and error calculations. We have to do certain things like this on a face-to-face basis. Therefore, for those areas, of course, only for the outcome generating projects, that's okay, but we should make sure that we can follow up and until the social implementation. Therefore, maybe we can come up with something like a SATREPS plus alpha. It doesn't cost so much to do that. And for major part, we can try to do most of the things on a remote way. Therefore, between JICA and the JSC, please consider those mechanisms. That is something I would like to ask. And there are things that I'm paying attention to. That was a question. In each of the countries, the mechanism is different. For example, in Japan, when it comes to air pollution, the local government implementing measures has the authority for the activities, and the national government will make decisions on the policy and produce manuals for the measurement. However, practical work is done pretty much by the local area. In the case of Mexico, the state finance is very limited, and there are research institutes and administrative services. However, only with the state government, there is a limit of what they can do. So they need the federal government support and the collaboration with the federal government. In that sense, so in terms of the things that I pay attention to, please pay attention to information exchange not only with the federal government, but also lower level local governments, and exchanging information with them as well. Otherwise, we cannot fully take advantage of the outcome of the researches in society. So I'm not sure whether I answered all the questions, but I talked about what I want to see going forward for SATREPS, as well as the things that I'm paying attention to. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer. So with that, we'd like to close the morning session. Thank you very much for your participation. There is an additional comment from Teraminami-san. Dr. Teraminami, please. I'm sorry. So thank you, Dr. Wakamatsu, for that response. I think that in your response, you said that similar projects cannot be applied, but we do not have that such rule. So let me clarify that at this point. If it's similar, and well, there is of course this trend that maybe very similar projects have like a higher hurdle to overcome in order to be accepted as project. But if you can justify that there should be a follow-up project to the first one, then I think that there's high probability that you will be granted the fund. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Teraminami, for that very important clarification. So with that, this concludes the morning session.